Experiential therapy is really, it's an umbrella term for any action-oriented, multi-level therapeutic intervention. There's action, there's movement, we're doing things. We're not just sitting and talking about the things, we're actually doing the thing. I've spent many decades of my life doing the best I could to fit in until finally just surrendering and succumbing to the space that fitting in is not the goal. We are wounded in action and in relationship, so we have to heal in action and in relationship. I see people who have believed for years, decades, sometimes lifetimes, that they're broken, come into a place of realizing that there's nothing wrong with them.
The big silence, empowering personal experiences, inspiring compassion, and healing lives. We are no longer silent. We are here.
The big silence.
Welcome to the podcast, Marc Pimsler.
I'm so excited to be here. This is awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
We're happy you're here too, because I know your story a little. My research, but it's such an incredible story. But I want to talk about what cool stuff you are doing to change the world and help people present day. So you are an experiential counselor and co-founder and executive director of the International Society for Experiential Professionals and the owner of MVP Consulting, where you help families and individuals, and you focus mostly on trauma, addiction, and healing.
Yes, exactly.
Can you explain to me more about what experiential counseling is?
Yeah, so anything that can be said in talk therapy can be shown in experiential. So with talk therapy, we traditionally use the top 20% of our brain where we are conscious and aware. But in experiential therapy, we use the entire system. And so when I say the system, I'm not only talking about the parts of our brain that we are aware of our thinking, but I'm also talking about all of our bodies. Our physical body, our emotional body, our energetic body, even our sexual body that is desperately in need of healing. All parts of us that make up the totality of who we are, because wounding impacts all of us. So healing has to be at least as impactful as the wounding was.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of therapy, all kinds, and I'm aware of a lot, but I had never heard of experiential. But it makes sense because it's connecting. As I'm just learning this, connecting your mind and your body and learning how to use both of them as one, sort of, and
Absolutely.
heal as one, not just, and I know through my own trauma, how it shows up in your body.
hmm Yeah.
So if someone comes to you and you're in Salt Lake City,
hmm
and what do you do? Talk therapy first?
So it's all kind of wrapped up together. So experiential therapy is really, it's an umbrella term for any action-oriented, multi-level therapeutic intervention is kind of my definition for it. And so what that means is there's action, there's movement, we're doing things. We're not just sitting and talking about the things, we're actually doing the things. So for example, I could have a glass of water here
Mhm.
and I could describe what water is, what it tastes like, how I could even describe how you get it into your body and how it nourishes you. Or what I could do is take a sip of it and offer you some water for
Mhm.
you to have an encounter with water and experience the nourishment that comes with taking it in. That's really the difference in as best a form as I can explain it.
So what you also specialize in stage 2 recovery.
Mhm.
What is stage 2 recovery?
So it's about moving beyond the grasp of just trying to get well
Mhm.
and moving into a space. It's going from survival into thriving.
Mhm.
And so stage 2 recovery is really about looking at all of the other things outside of the addiction, the trauma, the shame, what has been holding us back, and what is our passion. I don't think we are meant to just get into this human experience just to get okay. I believe we're meant to thrive, to be alive, and to leave this planet better off than we found it.
Yeah. Now you seem to be thriving and aliving, and I like this, that you believe you can only take a client as far as you yourself have gone.
Yeah.
You came from somewhere pretty dark.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
we start way back? Because this is what led you to the work that you do today. Can we start back with Mark as a little kid?
Yeah, yeah. Today I can say I love that precious, precious little boy.
Mhm.
And so I got kicked out of three preschools before I graduated preschool. And that would be the last thing I graduated until I got sober at 26.
Yeah.
So I was born on an island called Curacao, lived there until I was 7.
Where's
Uh,
that?
it's part of the ABC Islands. It's
Okay.
about 10 miles from Aruba.
Okay.
And so I was born there and just I think I just landed on the planet
Mhm.
angry. And so I was just in conflict, just as trying to navigate having a body and all of that. And at 7 years old, through the guidance of professionals, my parents, doing the best that they could, sent me to a psychiatric hospital, for which I was there for a year and experienced a tremendous amount of abuse and all kinds, every kind that you can imagine. And then actually, I found out months after I left the hospital, they actually got shut down for institutional abuse.
Oh. So, okay. So you went to what decade was this? Like
This was the 80s.
80s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was born in the 80s and 80s, 90s, no one's talking about mental health.
hmm
And so you basically were acting out as a kid. And any diagnosis?
So not today. I may be diagnosed with something like ADHD or
Mhm.
ADD, or really what it was trauma. One of the things that I once heard a speaker say is that if trauma were accurately diagnosed, the DSM, which is what we use for mental health diagnoses, which is huge, would actually be a pamphlet
Um,
that pretty much most, if not all, acting out behavior is trauma.
so you're pretty young, 7, when
hmm
this happens, and you're kicked out of preschool young. So where do you have something traumatic that happened to you really young, or do you think it was when in your generational trauma that you're holding on to, maybe when you were in your mother's womb, something was happening?
All the above.
Yeah. Nailed
So
it.
nailed
Nailed
it.
it.
So yes, I won the lottery of trauma. So um so actually my story began even before I was conceived. So I'm named after my aunt's son who died of SIDS when he was 6 weeks old. So his name was Mark, so that's my name. And my mom also had two miscarriages before me.
Mhm.
And so I was literally marinating in these three babies' deaths
Wow.
that my mom was afraid of, what happened to me as well.
Okay.
And so, and also, my ancestors, my ancestors are Jewish. And so the
Mhm.
Holocaust and running away from the Holocaust or being smuggled out of Germany was part of my lineage. And so 100%, there was definitely ancestral trauma, there was situational trauma, even before I even landed on the planet. And then certainly I experienced all kinds of things from sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, abandonment, all the fun things.
Yeah, well, I just bring that up because a lot of times I would assume young kids, people, professionals and parents are like, something's wrong with them. But you have to go back and think about that trauma that we hold. And even my father, he's first generation, but my grandmother was pregnant with him when they fled the Ukraine and Germany and in
Wow.
concentration camps. So there's all sorts of stuff there.
Yeah.
But okay, so I wanna go back to this mental hospital. You're in
Mhm,
there for a year at
mhm.
7 years old. Did you understand what was going on and why you were going there?
I think to the level or conception that a 7-year-old could. So I've got several memories, a lot of memories of being there. One of them is being at the head of a very big table
Mhm.
with all of these people in white coats, right? They were therapists and doctors. And I could sit there remembering like my legs not touching the ground, the chair and the table being way too big for me. And they were all discussing something. And what they were discussing was what is wrong with Mark.
Mhm.
Now, and they couldn't agree with what was wrong with me. The only thing they did agree on is that something was wrong with me.
Mhm.
So I got the message in that moment that something's wrong with me and it's so bad, we don't even know what it is.
Right.
And so that's kind of the mode of operation that I had in that entire time.
Yeah. So did this abuse, sexual abuse, can you share more about what happened in the hospital?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 7. My roommate was either 11 or 12, and he was the next oldest person on the unit. And all kinds of things. He taught me to masturbate. He taught me to, there was, I don't know how graphic you want me
I
to be, but penetration was
mhm,
involved. There were all kinds of things that I experienced. And what in his mind he was doing was teaching me how to love.
mm,
And so there was this really messed up for decades,
yeah,
and there was this real messed up image
yeah,
and idea of what love is and
mm,
what sex is. And for the longest time, I thought that that was my first sexual experience
yeah,
until I got clarity that that wasn't sex, that
mhm,
wasn't
yeah,
love, that was abuse.
right. Wow, so you go into a mental hospital to get fixed,
Hmm.
and you just get more messed up, I would assume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you were there a year. Where are your parents?
So, initially, they were still on the island,
Okay.
and while I was at the island, or while I was at the hospital, they moved from the island to Texas. So the hospital was in Fort Worth, Texas, and so yeah, so they moved there, and so my mom would come and visit, once a week, every time for visitation. And in fact, I once asked her before she died, I was like, "Did it ever occur to you to that it wasn't working?" And what she said is they every time she came for visitation, I would act out and I
Mhm,
would get worse and worse and worse. And they told her, and she believed that that was evidence that I needed to be there. And I said to her, I was like, did it ever occur to you that maybe I was acting out because I didn't need to be there? And she honestly, in her own humility, said no. She was doing what she thought was best for me. And today I can say that I actually believe that.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a lot. So a year. So then, do you go back to the island, or now your family lives in Fort Worth?
Yeah, so now my family actually lived in Arlington,
Okay.
and so I, was on this island, which was a different culture. Then I
Yeah.
was in the hospital, which was a completely different
Oh yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
and then I just get put
Mm.
into public school.
Well, because I was going to ask if you had to go back to your old school, and then how the kids were, treated you, but you just started over at a new school.
Yeah, so I just started over at a new school, and I was just the weird kid that, I was 3rd grade at Miller Elementary School System
Nice.
in Arlington, Texas. And yeah, I just didn't fit. And what's interesting, it's actually just recently I came into this awareness that, we all know that we are hardwired for safety, connection, and belonging. And I mistook fitting in
Mhm.
for belonging for most of my life. And I've spent many decades of my life doing the best I could to fit in until finally just surrendering and succumbing to the space that fitting in is not the goal. It is absolutely the goal to belong to healthy community, to find the tribe in which we can fully show up. Because by trying to fit in, I feel more and more isolated. By actually connecting and belonging in a healthy community, that is where I can actually feel and extend love, which is what I believe we're here for.
I think that's something really important to point out is, yeah, fitting in, you're changing yourself and who you are, so then you have these thoughts of being, uh, ins insincere,
Yeah.
of
Because you are.
yeah, because you're yeah.
Yeah, you're out of alignment.
Yeah,
Right.
I like that, belonging. Alright, so then now you're in 3rd grade, you're in Texas,
Mhm.
like, what's are you in therapy still? Are you like, what's the next step here?
Yeah, so I'm in therapy, just navigating that until a therapist literally, I think I was maybe 14, a therapist looked at my mom and very lovingly said, if you can just keep him alive, he'll be fine. And that was his honest, best recommendation. If you can just keep him alive, he'll be fine. And so, the first time I got drunk, I was 8 years old. I kind of just dove into anything that could take me out of where I was, which was unbridled pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so went on a journey of active addiction and did all kinds of things to fit in and to just find a way of just being on the planet that could be sustainable. And for me, getting high, getting drunk, all of that, or having lots of promiscuous sex, all of that was about just being able to stay on the planet.
Stay on the planet, distract yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was your breaking point, that moment where everything had to change?
Yeah. So it was August 20th, 2004. I was 26 years old. And I never shaved at that time. I just sort of clippered my face and I avoided the mirror at all costs. And so I remember I was clippering my face and I looked at the mirror and I accidentally caught a glimpse of myself and I didn't recognize the thing that I had become.
Mm.
And it was as if the world stopped in that moment. And everything shifted. It was as if I was just plucked in one reality and put in the next. And that was a moment of my recovery journey. Initially, it was about doing the work that I needed to do to get into a recovery process and stay that way. And then it became the secondary piece of addressing the trauma, addressing the grief, addressing the wounding so that I can move freely. And for me, that is what recovery is about, is recovering our freedom, that state in which we were came from and were made to go back to. And I think that that is what we are here to do really, is to find the freedom to be who we are.
So, who's listening and wants to get into recovery, and I'm picturing you in that moment and seeing yourself in the mirror. And were you scared of the change? Did you believe in yourself in that moment that you could change?
In that moment, there was no belief of anything.
Mm,
It was truly, I was the living dead,
mhm,
right? And so there was no belief of anything. I had no faith in myself because I had no evidence of anything in my life that was substantial enough to grab a hold on. So the image I have of that is I was literally flat on my back and there was nowhere to look but up.
mhm.
And so in that moment, I was certainly not a spiritual person at that time, but there was literally I looked all over the world to try and find peace, and so there were at that point there was no place to look but up.
Yeah. Interesting you say you look all over the world to try to find peace. And what I've been the type, change the situation, move here, do this, but guess what? The problems and the trauma's still there
Yeah,
until you go within yourself
yeah,
and
yeah,
heal yourself, because it's gonna follow you.
mhm, yeah.
So you get into recovery, into a program,
Mhm.
inpatient, outpatient?
It wasn't a
Oh,
treatment
okay,
program. It was like a mutual aid support group.
okay.
Yeah, I let people love me until
Mhm,
I could love myself. One of the things that pop culture psychology will say is you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. And in my lived experience, what I found is by being of service,
mhm.
by loving others, and by allowing other people to love me. That is when I was able to begin to step into a process of learning to love myself again.
Yeah, I someone else was talking about that on another podcast I was listening to about it is like you must love yourself to to accept love, but I would say even for myself, I had to learn how to love again,
Hmm.
and you were taught a false concept of love
Right.
in the mental hospital. So, what is that step? It's just you were being people were loving you so much and you allowed that.
Hmm.
Was it uncomfortable?
Oh my God, completely
You're like,
uncomfortable. I was like, but I was desperate,
mhm,
right? And I'll even love that word desperate, right? De-spirited.
mhm.
The spirit of who I am was like on life support in
Yeah.
a very real and metaphoric way. And so, what did that look like? That meant for me, service, being of service to others, getting out of myself was the path to liberation. So that meant everything from picking up the phone when someone called, to helping people move, to just being an ear, being a shoulder, or whatever. Offering up support to people who were coming up behind me trying to get sober. All of that service is the key to change everything for me.
Yeah. I love that. that concept too, and you're belonging to a community, and it's humanity actually
Mhm.
supporting each other,
Right.
and you learning how to trust this community that you belong to,
Mhm.
and then from there learning to trust again, learning to love again, and thus then learning to love yourself.
Right. Exactly.
So okay, you're 26, you're healing. How long did this process take to rid the addiction?
I'm still in well, to rid the I thought you meant so
Oh,
I'm still in the process of healing, right?
right.
Because, I
Oh,
think we'll be there, I'll be
your
there until
entire life.
breath leaves my body. But, I would say for me, I was a little bit on the fast track. I
Mhm,
always say we all get fuel for the fuel of our life, and some of us get unleaded, and some of us get jet fuel. And I
mhm.
got the jet fuel version.
Nice.
And fuel is a metaphor for pain. I believe that's actually it's the pain of our life that we can use to propel us forward if we're in right relationship with it. So to answer your question, how long did that take? I would say probably 6 to 9 months was a period of I was just trying to hold on. And then something began to shift around 9 months, absence of any mood or mind altering substances, that it actually no longer became a struggle.
Mhm,
It became something that felt organic and innate into who I am.
mhm.
I found a way because remember, the whole reason I was doing all that was just to stay on the planet. So I found a sufficient substitute that I could walk this planet without the need for all of that other stuff.
Yeah. So what good habits did you replace for your bad habits?
So being of service,
Yeah.
right? Doing work, addressing all of the things that, all of the pain and the trauma and the wounds, all of that kind of stuff, and spirituality.
Mhm.
My mom used to tell this story of me waking up when I was 3 years old from a nap, and she said I woke up, went into the living room where she was, and I said, "Mommy, do you know what happens when people die?" And I proceeded to explain reincarnation to her at 3 years old. And I asked her, I was like, of course she was shocked. And I asked her later on, I was like, well, did anyone die or did we go to a funeral? She goes, no, it literally was a Tuesday. And so I've always been, I think, attuned to
Mhm.
that space in that realm. But getting into recovery and joining spiritual community and having a teacher that I felt safe in following is what really helped kind of solidify this new path.
Yeah. So, okay, how do you get into being a counselor then? Because obviously now so many people have helped you and you are healing. We are always healing.
Mhm.
And now you're at this point where you're able to give back.
Yeah, I always say it found me. I
Mhm.
didn't find it. I had no intentions of being really anything.
Yeah.
I had no intentions of being alive, let alone having any type of career. And so, a friend of mine had owned a recovery residence, and he needed someone to do drug screens. And so that's kind of how it all started. And then I just loved talking to people, and it became clear that I had spent at that point the first half of my life hurting myself and everyone around me that I dedicated to serving humanity, to being of service. And so for me, that's where it led. When I started into recovery, I was a high school dropout. So I went back and got a bachelor's, got a master's, and got a license, and got all of
Amazing.
these credentials. And mainly because service is what pulled me forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so now your practice is in Salt Lake.
It's that's
It's
where I'm based out
okay.
of, but I tend to travel all over the world. People come to me for all over the world. I go to them, and so yeah, I work everywhere. Yeah.
So I was listening to a podcast you're on, and you were telling this story, and I would love for you to share it here. And it was surrounding shame, but it was about you were speaking at a conference, and you had like 699 good reviews, and it's that one bad review because I can relate to that. Being in public, and it's like all this praise, yay, thank you, and then this one jerk,
Yeah,
and it just
exactly.
sticks to you. And Bobby, my husband, is like, "Why are you dwelling on that? Why do we dwell on that one thing?"
Because it's what we believe.
Mm, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a short answer, and it's a teaching of a lifetime. right? It's because it's what we believe. Because if there's nothing for that to hook into,
Mhm.
then there's nothing for it to hook into.
Mhm.
And so I'm not in charge of what comes at me. I am I have the ability to take accountability and responsibility for what I get hooked by.
Mhm.
And so those things are the things I used to run from, but now they're the things I actually run towards
Mhm.
because they're my greatest teachers, right? So if you were to heap all of this judgment on me, you heaping it on me is about you.
Mhm.
And I'm not only talking about the negative judgment, also the positive judgment. I can get hooked by that too.
Yeah.
And so, but me getting hooked into it, that's about me and that's about my work, right? Can I perform the duties or the acts that is for me to perform without attachment to the fruits of my labors?
Mhm.
That's the job of freedom, is being able to say, your opinion of me is, it's kind of cliche in the recovery world that your opinion of me is none of my business. But to have that be an actuality, to
Mhm.
have that be the space in which I operate from, that's freedom.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
you know what really taught that to me is at that same conference, there were these two people sitting literally right next to each other.
yeah.
And one of them, the first person came up to me and was like, yeah, good, 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 blah, blah, blah. But you're literally one of the most arrogant people I've ever met. And I was like, huh, okay, thanks. And then the person literally in line next to her said, hey, everything you said was so awesome, but it blows my mind how humble you are. And I was like,
We're like, "Wow."
"What?" I was like, "Hold on a minute." And it became clear that neither of those opinions had anything to do with
With
me.
me.
It had
Yeah.
to do with the filters in which they saw me through,
Mhm.
not me.
So you have an event coming up. Tell me about it.
We've got an event coming up in September in Salt Lake, and it's really for anyone that wants to help people. And it is an experiential training
Mhm.
that will really give you a solid foundation for everything you need to know in order to begin to do the work of experiential support. So it's not just for therapists, it's also for coaches, whether you're a performance coach, life coach, recovery coach. And it's also not only about, I want to be clear that my work today is not only about the work of recovery.
Mhm.
It is really about just the work of healing humanity and healing the planet in which we live. But people who have come have been everything from CEOs, teachers, preachers, counselors, therapists, and life coaches and that kind of such. So it's a 4-day experience if you're signing up for the whole thing. And the only way I know how to do experiential work or teach experiential work is to do it. So the cool thing about that as well is you'll be invited into a process of doing your own work as you learn the tools and techniques of the method.
I love that. You work with a lot of families too, right?
Yep. Yeah. I work with individuals, families, couples, communities, corporations. Yeah.
I'm interested. What have your results been with families? Because I went to therapy with my mother. Didn't go so great, but we tried. But have you seen a lot of families heal in that process? Say it's like the kids and the parents, and what is an experience like that
Yeah.
working with a family?
Before I answer that, I even want to just pick up on something that you said, right?
Mhm.
It didn't work for us, right? And
Well,
very often, what happens is we as consumers of mental health support are gaslit into believing that if it doesn't work, it's because of us. And on behalf of the mental health profession, I just want to say to everyone, I'm sorry. If you're in a process of healing and you're feeling like it's not working, I would say 9 times out of 9, it's not because of you. It's because of the practitioner and because of the techniques and methods that are being employed.
I would agree that, and when I say I should go a little deeper into it didn't work. So my mother, schizophrenic, I was her caretaker. Uh, Once I became her caretaker, the last 5 years of her life, she had suicidal thoughts, and I had to get her into a psychiatrist and a therapist, and she was going weekly. And then I really wanted to heal our
Mhm.
relationship. Little Karena thought she could have her mom back. And then we would go together and we would go separate. And when I say that, that's on me. My expectation is that I was going to have mom and we were going to go shopping, get our nails done, have deep talks and this. And then when I was in there solo, a therapist goes, Karena, I just want you to know your mother is a narcissist
Mm,
and she will never be able to love you the way you want to be loved.
mm.
I was like, noted. Got another diagnosis. So you understand what I'm saying. It's
Yes.
she's doesn't have, not only from her mental illness, but then as a narcissist, she just wasn't going to be able to do it.
Mhm,
And so then I have to shift into empathy. It's not her fault.
mhm.
So that's what I meant
Yeah.
by it didn't work.
N- and I got that,
Yeah.
but I also wanted to not miss an
Mhm.
opportunity to let the general public know
Yeah.
that the vast majority of helping professionals out there are trained by a system that is not providing adequate tools for the wounding and pain that we are experiencing today. So,
Yeah.
so I just want that was the purpose of bringing that up.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. It was mostly just, talk therapy, and I'm the type, I'm like, "Give me some homework."
Yeah, let's do something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so back
So
to
back to the
family.
family.
Where were we going with that?
Where are we? What are we talking about? So yeah, back to the family. You know, we are wounded in relationship. We are wounded in action and in relationship. So we have to heal in action and in relationship. And it is profound when we can heal within the relationships of our wounding. That is not always the case, right? There's a tremendous amount of grace when we're able to stay in the relationships that hurt us. And very often, it is necessary to not be in those relationships. What I am clear on is we don't need anyone's participation
Mhm.
or permission for us to heal.
Mhm.
And when we do have the ability to heal together, it is a beautiful and powerful thing. Um, had a client once who um, brought his entire family on a 2 week or 10-day vacation in the Bahamas. And he brought me and a colleague out, and the first 4 days was a family intensive.
Mhm.
And so we did this deep, profound healing work and coming together and really getting real, stripping away all the performances so we can get to the reality of the relationship and doing the work to reconcile and they found their way back to each other. And what he told me is that was to date the best vacation they ever had because they were able to be real.
Mhm.
All of the static in the relationship had been cleared away
Mhm.
and they could just see each other as humans with, adult children with their adult parents navigating healthy, balanced relationships.
Yeah, I can see that being, it's almost, it came back in mind, the fitting in and belonging and make it like having belonging to your family. I would say even it's a lot of pressure, I'm sure, from some parents with an adult kid, like success and this and make sure they have kids and this. There's a lot of pressure. Um, so that's amazing. What I want to know, what does Mark Pimsler do for fun besides helping people?
Oh my God, my favorite thing to do is to belly laugh. Like those
Okay.
belly laughs
Yeah.
like with friends where you could just be irreverent, completely inappropriate and just be silly. Like that's the stuff that oh my goodness, that I love that more than anything. So really anything that laughs. I prefer connection over
Mhm.
like sitting and watching the movies
Yeah.
or doing something like that. 2 weeks ago went axe throwing for the first time, and that was
Oh.
so cool.
Mhm.
So I love adventure. I love trying new things. I today am in awe and wonder of the world in which we live, and there's so much cool stuff to do. I mean, you know, even getting here, right? I had this device we call a phone. I hit a button. Someone showed up in their car to take me to you. Like, it is a wild world in which we live. And if we're paying attention, it is so cool. And so that's what I love to do is just fall in love with the world I spent so long trying to escape.
I love that too, and I think it's really important what you're speaking so positively.
Mhm.
And what would you say to someone who maybe they don't know how to speak positively of, wow, I get to do this instead of I have to do this.
Well, let me tell you, I am also literally right now in the midst of another hell.
Oh, yeah.
In the midst of another unraveling,
Mhm.
in the midst of another, kind of leveling up. So it's not, please do not let me communicate that it is all butterflies and sunshine and rainbows today. My life is very real, and I am just recently divorced,
Mhm.
and there's a profound amount of pain.
Yeah.
And today, by being in right relationship with my pain, I can allow it to pull me, sometimes drag me,
Mm.
but pull me forward into whatever is next, this next evolution of Mark today. So, I think we use the metaphor um, in a toxic positive way, the idea of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly.
Mhm.
But what we tend to miss is that what literally happens to the caterpillar is that it melts into a primordial ooze before it begins to come back together to form the butterfly. And once the butterfly is formed, it has to fight and crawl literally its way out of the chrysalis in order to be able to fly. So, in some ways, I am absolutely that butterfly flying,
And
and in
then
other
you're
ways, I'm
oozing.
oozing for real.
Like,
So, so how to answer the question
yeah.
is that at some level, it's a choice,
Mhm.
and at some level, whatever I focus on, I see and experience more of.
Yeah.
And so, gratitude has saved my life over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it's really perspective and all of the work that you've done, and you have those tools to be able to still show up for yourself, and then you can go back to your hotel room and cry later. Just kidding.
And I might while eating barbecue.
Some good barbecue here. So if someone's listening, 'cause there's still a stigma around therapy, and
Mhm.
I would say even a bigger stigma around men and
For
therapy.
sure.
So what is your advice for someone who knows they want it, but they're afraid? Because even when I started going back to therapy probably 10 years ago, I didn't wanna do it. I would leave my office, drive for 45 minutes from Manhattan Beach to Santa Monica. Like, I don't wanna do it. Turn around, Karina, turn around. And then I'd go, I'd sit there, I was doing EMDR, and then after I left, I was like, "Thank goodness I didn't
Mm,
stop myself."
yeah. Yeah. One of my teachers, Swami Jayadevi, used to always tell us that the hardest part of meditating is bringing your butt to the cushion.
Yeah.
And once you're there, it's like,
Mhm.
right? But it's all of the mistaken beliefs, the mistakes of the intellect, the shame, the trauma, the pain that keeps us from doing the things that can set us free. And it's all of the shame that keeps us bound up. So, what would I say, especially to a man, but truly anyone,
Mhm.
is to do the opposite of what the fear tells you to do.
Mhm.
To you don't have to believe you're worth it, right? I think Nike got it. I think one of the greatest spiritual teachings of
It's
our
Nike.
world is Nike
Yeah.
in the whole just do it,
Yeah.
right? I always say, bring your butt and your mind will follow.
Mhm.
Don't wait until you want to,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah. Obviously, I come from the fitness world, and we say that even about working out, like,
Mhm.
just get to the mat. Just because then you're like, "Well, I'm here," and then you work out and you feel better. There's so many things we just don't wanna do it, but when we do it, we feel better mentally, physically, our health is better, our mental health is better.
Yeah, so I say live your life as an experiment, and the things that leave you more filled, that leaves you inspired and feeling more alive, do more of. The things that leave you feeling depleted, exhausted, and
Mhm.
dejected, do less of.
Yeah,
And that can at least begin to get you on a path where you might be able to find yourself and, quite frankly, what you're here to do.
yeah, it's true. What do you do for your meditation?
Um, I'm a crazy person when it comes to meditation. Um,
Please share.
yeah.
Are you gonna scare people away from
Yeah, probably. No, I consider myself interfaith. And so for me, what that means is that I love to love God. I love to worship God. And so everything, so my life in some ways is a puja, is a an offering of that love.
Mm.
And so today, I went to my first meditation or yoga class in 1999,
Mhm.
way before I ever got sober. And so today, that essence is one breath away.
Mhm.
That experience, that encounter with God is one breath away. And so I don't believe in a religion. I believe that there are multiple paths to the divine. And just like we use different languages to communicate to human, I think we can use different religions or spiritual path or no path at all to be able to communicate to that which is bigger than any of us. So
I
what does
think
it look like? It
yeah.
could look so I would consider myself a yogi, right? So it can look like doing yoga on a mat. It
Mhm.
can look like serving the homeless. It can look like sitting cross-legged and breathing, or doing some type of pranayama or breath work. It can look like holding someone as they're melting down and crying. I mean, that I am in a deep space of meditation when I'm working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you work with a lot of trauma, people who have trauma, and do you does any of that stay in you? Do you absorb that?
I don't.
No.
And where most of my colleagues experience burnout
Mhm.
is because of the space in which they're working from.
Mhm.
So I don't hold on to any of it because I am crystal clear. I'm not the doer.
Mhm.
Right. And so I often describe, people ask me, what is it like in my body when I'm working? And very often I describe it as I'm literally in the corner of the room being like, this is so cool. Like, look at what's happening. Miracle. So like that's where the human is. And so I'm not holding on to it because I'm tapped into a river that flows to me and through me. And so I don't have to hold on to any of it. The other reason why I don't experience burnout is because I'm doing things that are effective,
Mhm.
right? Very often people are worried about, well, is this professional or is this not professional? My interest and my goal has never been to be professional. My interest and my goal is to be effective. And so I see people, I see lights coming on. I see literally the dead being risen back to life in a very real and profound way. And I see people who have believed for years, decades, sometimes lifetimes, that they're broken come into a place of realizing that there's nothing wrong with them. I don't believe that we are broken. I don't believe in brokenness. I
Mhm.
believe in forgetfulness. And I believe that the more we can remember that divine spark, the more that we can come back home to ourself, that is the place in which healing can occur.
You say to me and through me, and I think this is something listeners can take into a situation of negativity around them and how to not absorb, whether it's a family member, a coworker. What would your advice, a practice that someone can do where they aren't absorbing just the people around them?
Yeah, is in a sentence or in a phrase is to believe them.
Mhm.
Right. And part of, there's a great quote that by Maya Angelou that I love, that when people show you who they are, believe them.
Mhm.
I've adapted it a little bit with great reverence to Dr. Angelou, that when people show you how they are,
Mhm.
believe them. And because who we are is an expression of the divine, but how we are is an indication of our pain. And so when I am seeing someone who is acting out or coming at me with negativity or whatever, I go into a space of believing them and just recognizing, wow, they must be in such profound pain to
Mhm.
be coming at me in that way, or to be doing whatever it is they're doing. I also, I've studied a lot with the Toltecs, and one of my other teachers, Jenny Gentry, teaches a lot about not taking things personally.
Yes.
And so it's not about me. I am actually, even though I used to believe this for a long time, not the center of the universe. So
Mhm.
everything happening here is not about me.
Yeah.
And so it becomes easier and easier to be like, huh, wow, that's how you are. And that is not about me. That's about you. And
Yeah.
then going into a place of great compassion because I know what it feels like to be in that level of suffering, that I can't help but be a jerk in the world.
Good advice there. Very good advice. All of this and anything else you want to share with any tips on how to be more at ease like you? Your presence is very calming, by the way. So,
Thank you. What I can say is it has taken a lot of work. But it's been joyful and it's been excruciating,
yeah.
and I wouldn't do it differently.
Yeah.
Like today, we talked a little bit about the story of my beginning of recovery, of
Mhm.
looking in the mirror and not recognizing the thing that I'd become. This morning, after I got out of the shower, this may be TMI, I was standing naked in front of the mirror in my hotel. And I just looked at myself and looked into my eyes, and it was completely spontaneous. So this wasn't planned or wasn't a practice. And I literally just started to cry
Mm.
because I love me today, not from a place of arrogance, but a place of recognition of who I am. And so, if you want to know where your work is, go look at yourself in the mirror and be with that reflection, and then find someone who has walked through what it is you're looking to go through. And
Mhm.
that's kind of one of the things you said earlier, is that I'm really big on, you can't take a person further than yourself have gone. I tell people all the time, I am not afraid of going into hell with you because I know the terrain
Mhm.
and I know the way out. And together we can walk into the fires of transformation, searching for the freedom that is our birthright.
Perfectly said.
Thank you.
Where can we find you, Mark?
So you can find me at marcpimsler.com. You can find me at icep.co. We'll put links
Yeah.
in the show notes for how best to find me.
And then for the event in Salt Lake,
Mhm.
is there a website for that?
There is. So you can go to icep.co. We'll also put a link
Yeah.
in the show notes, mainly because I don't know. If I'm being completely
Busted.
honest.
I know. I love it when
Busted.
people ask me, so this, and I'm like, I don't know.
I
I
don't
just like
know.
company, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Let me phone a friend and find out.
We forgive you.
That's actually been a recent thing that I've learned, is that I have absolute gifts and I don't have other gifts. And
Amen.
admin, organization, doing all the things in the world, not my gifts. My gifts, I am very clear on what I can do and what I can't do.
And that's perfect. That's exactly as you should
Which is
be.
why we are communal, right? We're
Yeah.
tribe animals. We're meant to have a team. We're meant to be within
Yeah.
a tribe. We're meant to sit in a circle, not have hierarchy.
Yes. Amen. Thank you, Mark, for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is such a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to get to join you as you share with your beautiful community.
The big silence. The big silence.